Okay, hi, good morning. I'm Stephen Kron. I'm the International Sales Director for AJ Fernandez Cigars, responsible for our business in 45 countries, in fact, the globe outside of the Americas. I have to say, Callie, I've given this one quite a lot of thought, and there's been quite a lot of discussion about who the best three people would be to have for dinner. I've looked and thought maybe I would like to have Billy Connolly, who actually was, we went to see in concert with my now wife when we first started going out together in a field in the middle of nowhere in Southern Ireland, in the rain, in a tent with a private audience before he was ultra famous as he is now. And he's certainly one person I'd love the company of at dinner. I'd like him to be joined by Clint Eastwood. I'm quite a fan of Clint Eastwood's movies, and I think he would have some really interesting stories to add to any after-dinner discussions. And just to make it a little bit more serious, I'd invite a gentleman called Lee Iacocca, who has passed away reasonably recently. He was the general manager of General Motors and the Ford Motor Company, and he's written quite a few books on business leadership and business management. So I think they would be my three guests for dinner: Clint Eastwood, Lee Iacocca, and Billy Connolly. Okay, so my father, believe it or not, last month, well, a couple of weeks ago actually, celebrated his 99th birthday. And unfortunately, with what's going on with COVID, we couldn't be together. And he has a particular liking for chocolate liqueurs. So the last gift that I gave anyone was to my father for his 99th birthday, quite a large box of various chocolate alcoholic liqueurs. Well, I think I have to go for eyes. I think the eyes are the most fascinating, truthful and insightful part of the human face. Something that I always tend to look at in people. So eyes would be my choice in that one. I'm torn here. I'm definitely torn here. I'd probably go for dolphins for their communication skills and elephants for their memory. I think if you put those two mixtures together, you've got quite a smart mix out there. So there'll be elephants and dolphins. Yeah, I'm not a great big gambler, and it's not something I do very often in betting. But the one thing that does come out of my head is every year, sometime around the first or second week in April, I'm sure everyone will know, there's a huge horse race in the UK called the Grand National, that normally has many riders and horses, and there's always people falling and getting injured and various things like that during the race. And every year I managed to put a bet on it. Even this year online for the first time, we always put a bet, not a very large one, but put a bet on 2 or 3 horses. And no matter what horses I pick, they usually are still running the next day. So I think craziness in terms of stupidity of keep betting on them. And upset of never actually winning. So I think that's probably a bit of a crazy thing to keep doing, but we do it, and it's a bit of fun more than anything else. I don't think there's certainly never large amounts of money involved. Yeah, this is a most interesting question, Callie. So thank you for throwing that one in. Contrary to what other members of my family might think, I would definitely say an orange. So hard-skinned, quite organized or segmented, and sweet. Music, I think, is quite a personal thing. So I'm not quite sure there's a worse song ever. But to answer the question truthfully, I think I'd have to say any song that currently is on my youngest son's playlist has to rate as one of the, if not the worst song ever. I'm sure he probably wouldn't agree with me, but yeah, I think that has to be my answer on that one. The most boring sport. It's got to be either darts or lawn bowls. I mean, I think that's enough said. I just think those two would provide the most amount of boredom out of any of the sports if they are sports. I'm sure they are somewhere down the line, but they would be, yeah, those would be my choice. Well, when you look back at my career, and I've done several different jobs over years, and one of them I had in the mid to late 90s. I worked for a small beverage company that you might have heard of called CocaCola. And I was based in the Middle East doing a sales job for them across quite a big regional patch. And we had the privilege one day of being told that the CEO of Coca-Cola, a gentleman called Doug Ivester, back in 1995 to 1997, something around that time frame, was flying in to pay us a visit. Besides the fear and dread it put into absolutely everyone involved in the company at the time, he was an incredibly, and possibly still is, I don't know if he's still alive, but he was an incredibly interesting gentleman to sit and listen to in a very relaxed environment, as it happens, and his stories about his travels, about Coca-Cola Company, the history of Coca-Cola, and how the company had stayed where it is in the history of beverage companies and corporations, one of the biggest in the world. He was certainly quite interesting. And I have to say, probably even more interesting than listening to him was listening to the stories of his pilot and crew from his private jet, because some of the stories that they managed to tell were also very interesting, not to be repeated, of course. But Doug Ivester, Coca-Cola CEO, was certainly one of the most interesting gentlemen I've come across, yeah. Well, you got to look at different age groups as you're growing up, but the one that sort of stuck with me for quite a while, and I'm probably still even now actually, was the original Star Trek series with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. I think it started in the 60s and went on to somewhere around the 80s and keeps being repeated and repeated. But the original Star Trek series was certainly one that I would have watched over and over again growing up. So yeah, Star Trek original.